Welcome to my presentation. Today you're in for a treat. Something that I have not found on YouTube, so maybe I might be the first. But this presentation goal will be to not only say that Israel went into Asia, but to prove it. Provide the proof, the materials. And the materials that we will be covering will be materials from the 1500s to the 1800s. So majority of us were trying to avoid slavery, death, and white Jesus. So the content was not altered or modified. None of us were reading their books, so they did not hide their objectives. Did they actually write our history in their books? I think they did. There is an uprising and awakening of Israelites in the West. But are there Israelites in the East? If you find time, look up the Scythians and go and see who they are. YouTube it. And if you also want to do some research, go into the Scriptures and find out who they are. You will be amazed. But let's begin. So now let's get started with my favorite piece of material from The Lost Tribe, A Myth. This map is actually found in that book. And many Israelite camps use this book. However, many Israelite camps do not show this map. So I want to highlight that this map is found in The Lost Tribe, A Myth, showing where the Israelites were scattered throughout all Asia. Now, part of me think that this map is not highlighted because the amount of confusion that it could cause. Israelites were scattered, and if you look at the map closely, it shows Jews where they were located, where their synagogues were at, what happened to them, that there was a massacre, that they were killed in this location due to Jews surviving among the nomads. Basically, the Mongol Jews persecuted by the Christians. So you have actual traces of history that was obviously developed by those in the Inquisition or those that was posing as Israelites and sending them into slavery. As we go through this presentation, you will see that many of these locations, there was a slave trade sent from these locations into other locations within Asia, in the Pacific and South Asia Sea. But this map is critical. So if you want to go out and get the book, or you just want to take a screenshot, take it, review it, do your homework and research, because this area do get confusing, because you will see throughout this presentation many of the Israelites intermingled, mixed in with the Mongoloid people, or what you want to call Moab or Ammon, and started to take on their features and look just like them. And you will see that with books and proof. And in fact, you will also see that once upon a time that these Israelites used to look very Negroid in Japan, as well as in Korea, as well as in China. But also a lot of them was sent out into the Philippines and South Asian Sea. And you would just read this material. There is a clip that I have on here. I forgot where I pulled it from. But as you read it, you will see that it's evidence that a lot of the black and Negroid elements were found within the Japanese people as well as the Chinese people. And these were people were sent into slaves or were slaves from the Philippines and sent as slaves into the Philippines. But you will see that they were scattered abroad, as it says in the Scriptures, on the east. All right, let's proceed. Now, I would like to present you with a little bit of good news and a little bit of bad news. So, the good news. We are going to still cover a lot of areas within Asia. We are going to cover Japan. We are going to cover a little bit of China. We're going to cover a little bit of India. However, we will not cover all the Southeast Asian Sea, and we will not cover all areas of Asia like Korea and so forth. I only focus on certain areas due to the resources I found and the books I found. So if I did not include your location, like Korea or something like that, I apologize. I do not have that much time on my hand to research all that. But I do have good information on the Philippines, India, some on China and Japan. So let's focus on the Philippines. The Philippines actually has 7,000 islands and about 180 ethnic groups. Yet, majority of the Philippines do not even know their history or their native languages. So that is the reason why I'm focusing on the Philippines. And only the people in the Southeast Asia who can trace their history is to biblical time is the Javites, which are most of the Indonesians actually. Because if you go to Indonesia, there's a Java. And if you go to the Bible, Japhet is one of the three sons of Noah, and then you have Java, which is one of Japhet's sons. Look it up. In addition, there is the Chinese and the Japanese influence in the Philippines, and the migration of the Portuguese, India, the Africans, and the Dutch Jews. Look it up. We'll cover a little bit of that. And trading with the Mexicans, and finally, the suppression of the Spanish and Americans when they came through to suppress the Philippines and all those in the Southeast Asian Sea and all over the Asia area, which explains how you can have such a large variety in Asia. So the focus actually is the Southeast Asian Sea and the Philippines, but realize the mixture without that whole area is due to not only just intermixing, but due to all the different types of populations that went in and out. But biblically, there's only one we can identify, but we will identify a few more throughout this presentation. So now let's just talk about a particular group of people that were in the Philippines. The Moros. The Moros is another term for Moors. The Moors was a group of people that were considered to follow under the faith of Islam or the Muslim faith. If you look back and research, you will find out during the Papal Bulls that the Spanish Inquisition, you were forced to Christianity or you were forced and converted into Islam. The whole goal was you to not be a Jew. That's it. They didn't persecute Muslims in the beginning. They only persecuted the Jews. But many of these people became what's called the Sephardic Jews. They're Abenaki and Sephardic. Abenaki is just a group of Jews that became Jews through conversion themselves, but they were never originally a part of the heritage or the people. Please look up and do your research. I hate seeing these dumb YouTube videos of people calling trying to say they're the same people. They are brothers through Esau and Jacob. Yes, they are. But everybody that reads the Bible knows that they ain't the same people. They're not. But let's look up the Sephardic Jews. The origin of the term Sephardic is unknown. Some argue that it came from the Hebrew name for Spain. Others suggest it had a much older meaning, which goes back to either Persia or the Greeks. Wherever its origin, Sephardic Judaism came to be identified with Jews living in the Arabian Peninsula until they were expelled from Spain by Fernando. At that time, the majority of the Sephardic Jews took refuge in Muslim lands. So please note that a lot of Jews, they were nomads and they took refuge in Muslim lands and became Moors or Moros. So do your homework and you'll realize that these people also were actually Jews. That's the whole point. The Moors, and as you see in this one book at the bottom, it says the Moors of Spain, when their turn came, suffered full-fledged religious and racial persecution. So, wait a second. First it was the Jews that was suffering persecution. Now the Moors, because they knew that some of the Moors had Jewish blood. If you go back up to another book, you will see that before the explosion of the Jews in 1492 were conversos, that is, Jews converted to Christianity. See, now we're talking about the Jews converted to Christianity versus the Moors. But Fernando himself, and thus by extension of Catalina, had some Jewish blood in him. So there you go. There was Jewish blood not based on so they would persecute you. They would persecute people based on Jewish blood and race and background, not on conversos or people that converted to Judaism, which are the Ashkenazi Jews. So please do your homework and realize the difference between a convert. So now let's clear the air a little bit on who some people are saying that the Philippines are. For instance, there are YouTubers out there talking about the Philippines being Tasha. Great, good try. It doesn't work. And in fact, if you do confirm it's Tasha, that means they are from the seed of Japhet, which some Filipinos are from Japhet. But for those that believe Philippines is Tasha, Tasha was actually in Spain during biblical times, and that was the seed of Japhet. The first ruler of Spain was Japhet until the Edomites came and cast them out to the east into Asia and the islands. So that did happen. So many of the Japhites, the Greeks, and the Java are a part of the South Asian Sea, which, going back to the map I was mentioning, it will get complicated because you don't know who is who. It's very, very complicated. But people need to stop saying the term anti-Semitic because you sound stupid as hell and not smart enough to realize they only use that term to gaslight you. You have to be an anti-black, white, Chinese, Japanese, Elam, all these different people in order for you to be anti-Semitic, you idiot, versus making a comment only about people of Israel. Claiming one nation doesn't have anything to do with the other. But we do need to realize that guess what? There are other nations. So, I do have a nations table. It's not mine, but I'm using it because it does break down who the other people are. Now, it will get complicated. For those that are not Israel, go research, do your study. Hey, maybe you know who you are now. Congratulations. But for those else, hey, look up who you are. Do your homework. Figure out whether you are Israel or whether you are another nation. At the end of the day, we are who we are. I can't change who I am, and you probably sure ain't gonna change who you are. But there are books that highlight and confirm who Edomites are, who Moabites are, who Ammonites are, who Ishmaelites are, and so forth. But realize when I say that these people are Israel going into these areas, that is just a piece and remnant of people in these areas. The bulk of them, yes, they are Moab, Ammon, Elam, different nations. But Israel is sprinkled in it. So at the end of the day, the goal is to see if your spirit bear witness with this presentation. Go do your homework and pray to God. Guess what? You do love Jesus and you love Black Jesus. Guess what? You might be Israel, but that's on you. All right. Now let's proceed. So now let's look at the Morello-Velarde map of 1734. I hope I said that right. But let's look at this map. This is a little bit of forgotten history. This map was just recently returned to the Philippines. Now on this map, on what map has anyone ever in their life seen a region called Gentiles? I got it circled and highlighted that they have areas called Gentiles. Why? The term Gentiles was only used by the Israelites or someone looking for Israelites. This is a 1700 map of the Philippines, which is just returned to the Philippines from Spain. Now, if you go look at the Bible, for those that don't know and those that has been brainwashed like myself, and been reading all these times that Gentiles was strictly just anybody else. Well, we just finished talking about the other nations. Now, all nations were considered Gentiles or heathens, but Greek and Gentiles, a lot of times they use that as hey, they have become heathen-minded, because if it really was true, as we have seen throughout the Bible, they do identify the Edomites and the Ammonites and the Ishmaelites and those in the New Testaments on what's going to happen to them, how they feel about them, and so forth. They don't just say Gentiles, but realize there's a reason why you have Gentiles highlighted on a map. somebody there knew something. Pay attention. It's common sense. Now, let's take a look at the book, The Jews and Moors in Spain. If you notice, the Jews and Moors, just like the Moros. They explain what happened to the Jews for keeping the commandments of God. Their strategy was to control and mold the children to be a generation of slaves and serve a false god in Christianity. Now let's read. All Jewish children below 14 years of age were torn from their parents' arms, dragged into a church, and baptized. Those under 3 of age were given to Christians to receive Christian education, or, in other words, to be raised as slaves. That's interesting how Christian education means slavery. That's weird. Those between 3 and 10 years of age were put on board of a ship and conveyed to a newly discovered or hotel island in St. Thomas. Now, please do realize we're not talking about Asia, but just a coincidence, you will see this happening in Asia. Same pattern. Now, if we want to go biblically, we can always look that if we go to First Maccabees 1, just 41, it says, moreover, the king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave their laws. So the goal is to make sure they leave their laws. And then, by the way, go to verse 43, ye may also of the Israelites consent to his religion and sacrifice unto idols and profane the Sabbath. So they want us to sacrifice to the idols. That's why you have all these other gods. Now, if you also go to 2 Maccabees 6, it says, neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath day or ancient feast days or profess him to be a Jew. So that's why they became Moors and Christians, or Sephardic Jews, or Conversos, or different Morenos. All these different names was the names that we used to try to hide our identity. But that's what we had to do. Because on verse 9 it says, whosoever would not conform themselves to the matter of the Gentiles. Ooh, look at that word, Gentiles. I think I was reading about that on that map. Should be put to death. They should be put to death. So in verse 11, and others that had ran together into caves to keep the Sabbath day secretly, being discovered, were all burned together. That's interesting. I think they burned them in the Spanish Inquisition, and you will see a little bit of that later. So now let's get back to Asia. I want to cover that, this is what happened in Spain when the Jews started getting persecuted. But as we proceed back to Asia, now the goal is to figure out exactly what tribe went into Asia. I mean, who went to Asia? Well, Israelite did migrate to India. There's documents and books. We're going to have a lot, book after book after book, about India. And actually, it's just a coincidence. They talk about the tribe of Manasseh and going into these locations that were identified in Malabar Coast and so forth. And even Scriptures talks about it. In Deuteronomy 4:27, and the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in numbers among the heathen. Whether the Lord shall lead you, one of the least spoke about the Israelites in India Sea slave trade. India Sea slave trade. So the India Sea slave trade, did it stop in India? Nah, didn't stop in India. So now what about Isaiah 11:11? It says, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left in Assyria, in Egypt, in Pathros, in Cush, and from Elam, and from Syria, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Well, there's some islands out there, but that's what it says in Scripture. So let's go see what islands we're talking about here. All right, so now let's get back to our book that we started off with, the map. The Lost Tribes, a Myth. So we're going to cover page 17 first. So it says Cardinal Megan, quote, another form of Afghan traditions that Jews of the tribe of Asher, ooh, look at that, tribe of Asher, were founded in Afghan, and that they moved thence down into India. Hence the Jews of India today, from the mouth of Indus down to West Coast, while Manasseh settled in the border of China and Turkey. And 5 centuries later, they spread all throughout Asia. Oh, that is pretty cool. So the guys in India also went into Asia too. Ah, that's nice to know. All right, so now let's go to page 343. It says they claim that a part of the tribe of Manasseh was placed by Nebuchadnezzar in the east part of his domain, and 200,000 Jews later traveled thence to India, spreading 3 years into migration. As Nebuchadnezzar's domain did not reach east of the Zagros Mountains, immediate west frontier, the tradition is sound as to the road by which some Jewish colonies reached India, but has lost the fact that Persian policies put them in the northwest province, meaning they forgot why they were there. That's all that means. All right, now over to page 423. It says Judaism certainly reached Japan. Ooh, Japan. Okay, really? Okay, let's read that. It says then extended, and then the extent of its spread and influence is still undermined. Oh, okay. It says the creed of half Japan endeavored to prove that it had largely influenced Japanese Buddhism ideals. The concrete facts are that in the province of Yamato are 2 ancient villages, Ganesh and Manasseh. For these names, there is no Japanese origin. Let me say it like that. The legend is that in the 3rd century of our era, a strange people, about 100 silk razors. Oh, the Silk Road. That's interesting. The Silk Road. Yeah, Silk Road. I remember that. So the Silk Road appeared in the census of the year 7471. This people numbered 800,670 and were highly esteemed in the province. The temple known as the Tent of David still stand where they once settled, and they were known as the Persian dog and the Buddha dogs and the Persian lions. You will actually see this information again. So now, let's look at the history of the Jews and the destruction of Jerusalem from the present time, 1818. So, we're going to read this book here. Now, I also have a reference of a YouTube video from IUSC. I pour a lot of their materials. I do trust their materials more than anybody else's. And this is probably where I got the book too. But I also got a lot of my own research that I've done to fill some of the gaps on things I couldn't understand. And knowing that I'm over in a certain area, I could find this over here. But Dr. Buckingham, while he resided in India, was seriously engaged in investigating the state of the inhabitants. What was he investigating? The Jews. Oh, he said, are numerous in India. Oh, I found the Jews. Oh, cool. And reside in towns about a mile distance from Cogent called the Jew town. Yes, I found them. And it's also wholly inhabited by this people who have 2 respectable synagogues. Among them are some very intelligent men. Yes, they were. Or are not ignorant of the present history of the nations. You remember the nation chart, guys? Nations. They knew who was who. And they are also Jews here from a remote part of Asia. So, this is the fountain of intelligence concerning the people of the East. This means these are the Jews and the smart people. Check that out. And they're being consistent communication by ship, meaning they were sailors and merchants, with the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf and the mouth of the Indus. These resident Jews are divided into two classes called the Jerusalem or the white Jews. Wow, so we got two different Jews all of a sudden. And the ancient or black Jews, let me guess, those are the Jerusalem Jews. I'm guessing those are Jerusalem Jews. The white Jews reside at this place. Where these white Jews come from? I think they conversos. The black Jews have also a synagogue here, but the great body of the tribe inhabits in town in the interior of that province. So now you have two different types of Jews. Very, very interesting now. Very, very interesting. This learned author thus proceeded in his interesting relationship. What kind of relationship? On my inquiry into the ancient or the antiquities of the white Jews. So he didn't look at the ancient Jews. He said, I'm gonna see what the white Jews bring to the table. So what did they bring? Well, they first delivered to me a narrative of the Hebrew language of their arrival from their fathers and their inhabitants, their ancient brass plates containing these their characters and freedom of residencies that was given to them by the king of Malabar. Interesting how all of a sudden the white Jews hijacked the true Jews. Think about that. They hijacked the narrative and say, we are the Jews, not those guys. But we can see the ancient Jews or the Jews of Jerusalem were the bloodline Jews. Do your homework. Don't be stupid. All right. Same book, different page. All right. So page 453. Now the goal of this page is just to talk about that we're talking about the tribe of Manasseh and we're talking about the people in Israel, but they're still called black Jews. Don't forget, black Jews are the bloodline Jews. So right here it says the black Jews retained the tradition that they arrived in India soon after Babylonian captivity. Their Hindu complexion and their very imperfect resemblance of the European Jews indicated that they had been detached from the parent stock of Judah, that's your southern tribe, many years before the Jews in the west, and that they had been intermarried with families not Israelites. So basically, you're talking about now the northern tribe, Manasseh, northern tribe. Northern tribe is always going to be lighter. Northern tribe is always going to look like mostly other nations, point blank. However, next sentence, the white Jews looked upon the black Jews as an inferior race. How so? And not of pure caste. What? Not a pure caste? What do you mean? Which plainly demonstrates that they did not spring from the common stock of India. So you're telling me now you converted to our religion, and now you're persecuting them from there. Damn, that sounds just like them. But that's how they are. Anyway, making up lies and now claiming your identity. I got scripture for that. They will take your place. Don't trust your enemies, or they will take your place. I'll get that scripture later. That just came up. But now the doctor is observing again. I wonder who this doctor, what's the doctor objective? So the doctor is investigating the black Jews' communication with them much interesting intelligence concerning so basically they're giving an intel. They're giving them free intel. That's what the black Jews always been guilty of. We just been gullible to give them up our details. So they gave up their current intel concerning their brethren in ancient Israelites in the East. Oh, this is in Asia. Traditional indeed, it in its nature, but in general illustration of true history, they recounted the name of many other small colonies in North India, Tahiti, and China. There we go, China, and gave him a written list of 65 places. So we were like, here you go, Esau, take it, go do what you want. We trust you. Wrong, because they basically went out there and, of course, knew how to develop that map. So if you want to know how they developed the map that we saw in the beginning, this is how. We gave them a list, and they just took the routes and followed and persecuted each Jew colony after each Jew colony after each Jew colony, and enslaved them over and over and over again. Okay, next page.
So now let's see if the same narrative that was in the previous book, the destruction of Jerusalem, carries over into another book. This book here we have is the Jewish Encyclopedia. Now we have identified that the Jews have migrated into India. You have the black Jews, you have the Hindu-looking Jews, you have the European-looking Jews, and all of a sudden you have these white Jews. Now you notice the white Jews start saying they were more superior and more of the actual seed of Israel, which we all know that's not true. If you do your homework, we already know this. Let's not cover this again. But let's see what happens all of a sudden. So as we see this, you can read the whole page. I'm not reading all this, but you've got plenty of content here just so you can read it for yourself. But slavery was formally followed in Malabar, meaning slavery all of a sudden a form of slavery moved into Malabar all of a sudden. I wonder why. Why did it move into Malabar? Let's read the next word. And the white Jews could make other slaves. So all of a sudden the white Jews started making people slaves. The native male and female whom they brought were admitted as slaves according to the Jewish law. So they brought some other Jews with them. Ooh. And even those who voluntarily entered the fold of Judaism were not admitted and treated as strangers of righteousness. That means you're not a part of us, but as slaves. The males had to undergo a ritual of circumcision, and the females were subjected to abductions. So they were subject to abductions. Their offsprings also treated as slaves. At the time of circumcisions, the mode who performed this ritual rite and the blessing of circumcision slaves and similar blessings was a ritual at the time of their abduction. Abulation. Abulation. So if you see what's going on now, you're seeing that the white Jews have definitely infiltrated the India, the Kojic Jews, the Malabar Jews, and started putting them into slavery. Now, if you do your homework, and we're going to show it in the books in a few slides, you will see these Malabar and Kojic slaves. When you say slavery, what kind of slavery? The Indian slave trade, the Pacific slave trade. They were sent into slavery and shipped out. Now, here is a link. This is a YouTube link. Click on the YouTube link and watch the video. Currently, Israel is showing that the tribe of Manasseh has now reached and have now arrived to Israel. So those people were remained, according to what I'm reading here, they were put into slavery. Because we know it was Manasseh, but did Manasseh stay in India? Or did Manasseh go somewhere else? Because I think they did. But please feel free to click on the YouTube link, and you can see that all of a sudden they are now in Israel, where Manasseh might have followed under the same curses that the rest of the tribe of Israel went into, and now they just got people that happen to look just like possibly the tribe of Manasseh. So where did these guys go? When they went into slavery, they went into this thing called the Pacific slave trade. There's documents, the slave trade in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and the slave trade in the port of Cebu in the Philippines. There was a slave trade with slaves, as you read below. The Arabians and the Europeans and the Spanish went into these Southeast Asian countries, as well as, into Japan and China as well. And they traded gold, cotton, silk, the Silk Road, and they also took a few slaves. So you just saw in the Jewish Encyclopedium that these these Jews became slaves under the white Jews. So who were they selling in the slave trade? Oh, wow. Do they meet the prophecy of Deuteronomy 28? It looks like they might have. All right, let's keep going. So this is when it gets really entertaining and controversial. I highly recommend, I don't know how you can find this book. I only want to know one link I can get the whole book off of. But it is out there. You can YouTube it. You can, I don't think you can YouTube it. I think you only have to Google it and it might pop up. The link might show up where you can get this book. There is a series of book called The Library of Political Secrets, Fifth Columnist Israelites. Fifth Columnist Israelites. Never heard of Fifth Columnist. So what I did is I looked it up. And here's your definition. A fifth column is a group of people who undermine a large group from within. They undermine a large group from within, usually in favor of an enemy group of nations. So don't forget about these nations, by the way. Enemy group of what nation, by the way? Let's figure out what nation are they enemy group of. The activities of a fifth column can be overt or clandestine. That means in disguise, like a crypto Jew. You have clandestine Jews. Forces gathered in secret can mobilize openly to assist an external attack. So what nation are they an enemy of? Oh, if you go back a few slides, go back a few presentations, the white Jews all of a sudden started making these other Jews slaves, and they became enemies. So these other Jews started hiding, trying to hide their identity, became crypto Jews or clandestine Jews, or different, like we did like they did in Spain. They started going other identities. Now let's read Esther 12:4. Declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world there was scattered a certain malicious people. This sounds like the same thing. That had laws contrary to all nations and continuously despised the commandments of the king. So, as the uniting of our kingdom, honorably intended by us, cannot go forth. Oh, that's why they were enemy, because they wanted to achieve their objective, but these Israelites were contrary to the nation laws, so they had to call them and give them the name fifth column. Read the history. It matches scripture. Now, let's go into certain countries. And this is just a small insert from this book from that country. Like I said, it's about 9 volumes of this Library of Political Secrets. First country, Japan. Let's read it closely. If these secret Jews are rooted out and stripped of their power, in Japan and China follow a policy in favor of their race and nation, which race and nation we talking about, and reject pressure from Israel and American Jews. Are those the white Jews? The whole of Asia could eventually follow their example and free themselves in other countries of Jewish domination. Oh, so that explains they were the enemies, like we said in Esther 12:4. United of kingdoms. They wanted their kingdom, the Jewish domination of the American Jews. Who those? The white Jews, the Nazi Jews, and they didn't want them to follow the secret Jews, the other secret Jews, which were the race and nation, and so they wanted them to reject their ways to follow their ways. So you even see it sound like they had two different very, very entertaining. So let's go to China now. Later, mixed marriages have increased the number of fixed colonist Israelites, there go that name again, whose racial appearance is Chinese, but who in secret are members of the nation of Israel. So they look just like the Chinese. Wow. Increase in this way, the clandestine Israelites, fifth columns, although we believe that the Chinese population resulting from these mixed marriages may still be small, it would be an important investigation to calculate the number of Jews in China. So they were searching hard and hard. Go back to the map in the beginning. You will see that they were looking for them. That's how they got the route. And don't forget, a couple slides before, we told them exactly where they were. And that's how they found them. So now let's go to Isaiah 16, and I got it right up here, 16:4. It says, "Let my outcast dwell with thee, Moab." Ooh, is that? I think the first nations, one of the nations was China, Moab. "Be thou a covert to them from the face of the spoiler, for the exhortation is at an end, the spoiler ceases, and the oppressor are consumed out of the land." Wow. Read that scripture. Read it, because they're saying, "Let my outcast dwell thee with Moab." Dwelling where? China. We just said Moab is China. That scripture say they're going to be dwelling there. And it says, "And be thou a covert," meaning be in secret, hide to them from the face of the spoiler. Who's the spoiler? Those people that was looking for them, that was trying to persecute them and put them in slavery as well. So they said, be a spoiler, be in disguise, just hide out, be a fifth columnist. Interesting, very, very, very interesting. So, and then if you go down to verse 14, it says, "But now the Lord hath spoken, saying, within 3 years, as the years of an hireling, and the glory of Moab shall be contempt with all that great multitude, and the remnant shall be very small and feeble," meaning there will be a remnant in China. Okay, so now let's go look at Daniel 9, Daniel 9:7. And it says, just to verify, because we people know the northern tribe they don't look like the southern tribe, but let's just read it for fun. O Lord, righteousness belongs unto thee, but for us confusion of faces, as at this day, to the man of Judah, and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and unto all of Israel that are near and that are far off. Through all the countries whither thou hast driven thee, through all the countries thee hath driven thee, because of their trespasses, because of our sins and breaking the commandments, and they have trespassed it against thee. O Lord, to us belong confusion of faces. They would have confusion of faces against to our king and to our princess and to our fathers, because we had sinned against thee. What sin did they do? They intermingled with other nations. They know that. Some people might say confusion of faces means something else. I'm not an expert. I know I'm not. Trust me. I do watch a lot of stuff, and I'm not an individual. Like, I'm in a different country where I have nobody around me. So just make sure, people that watch this, you don't categorize. Don't you dare come at me like that. So anyway, all right. So those are two scriptures right there. There you go. So now let's go to India. Let's read what India has to say. So India, the first European Jew arrived in the Portuguese colonies, mostly as crypto Jews, secret Jews. They were in disguise. And we just finished reading a lot of books about India. So that is to say, as clandestine Jews, that's that name again, pertaining Christianity, the abundance of clandestine Portuguese Jews seem to have been one of the reasons for the establishment of the Inquisition of Gaul. So you trying to tell me the Jews established the Inquisition? And then between 1561 to 1623, the Inquisition condemned 3,800 people, mainly for secretly apprehending to Judaism? Okay. Please read between the lines. You're telling me that secret Jews established the Inquisition to persecute Jews for keeping the law. You gotta see the lie. Obviously, there were those Ashkenazi Jews, white Jews, coming to persecute the northern tribe Jews that was keeping the commandments, but pretending to be them at the same time and persecuting them. And they what they do? They condemned them. Where did they condemn them to? Into slavery, and shipped them out into different countries. So let's go to Luke 20:20. And they watched him and set forth spies, which shall form themselves just men. So they basically going to disguise themselves as just men, that they might take hold of his words, that so they might deliver him unto the powers and authorities of the government. That's exactly what they were doing in every country. They would disguise themselves as they were them, and then they would secretly take them in after they realized and identified who were the Jews, and they went into persecute them, enslave them, kill them, or make them convert, one or the other. Now, here is a timeline of some lifestyle of Martin, and basically he was a soldier coming from Mexico, and he basically was deployed to Manila under one of the kings to basically fight with the Moors and the Filipinos. And you can read here, I'm not going to read this, but you will see that there was a few families that were in the Philippines that were Catholic Sephardic Hebrews or Hispanic Jews, and they basically changed their surname so that they can prevent themselves from being persecuted, and they continued to change their names and hiding while they were in the Philippines. But this is just a slight track record of what happened in the Philippines. Philippines and Mexico had many relationships prior to the Spanish Inquisition. They traded back and forth with one another, and they had many families in between the two countries. So there's more homework to do. I'm still doing my research, but just realize the Philippines did have the Spanish Inquisition there. I mean, the Holy Inquisition, as well as a lot of persecution. All the Jews are captured in the Manilas and are abducted and then sent to Mexico. So a lot of Jews that were in the Philippines were sent into Mexico. However, I will show you later on, there were also Mexicans that were of Jewish descent sent into the Philippines. So this slide is just to cover a few books that are out there. Although The Asian Slaves of Colonial Mexico is a modern day book, the references is from the Spanish archives. I actually had someone say that you cannot credit this book. Well, I just read a whole bunch of books already from prior time. So now we're going to get into some in that book a little bit to cover that. Those books I read earlier, it's going to show you that those people that were sold into slavery came from those locations. What a coincidence. And then at the same time over here, I don't know what this book is. This is about the Inquisition of gold, as well as the Philippines and persecution of Jews in the Philippines. This is just with the page. I happen to find it, but also on the next slide I have the type out version of it. Basically, all I'm doing is confirming the curse of Deuteronomy 28 was fulfilled within the Philippines, and it's not a thought of, oh yeah, that's they other people went through slaves in other countries. No, that's not the case. You can say that by everybody, yes, but no, these guys went through the exact same curses in many cases. Am I saying all Filipinos and all Southeast Asian people are Israel? Absolutely not. I'm just saying it's just a massive amount of evidence showing that those curses were tracked to those guys that was in India, into those areas, into China, and then happened to fall right into traps, into captivity and slavery within those countries, and even shipped to other countries like the Philippines and Mexico. Let's go. So the page that was on your right, here is the content that was on that page. This is some more forgotten history. But the Inquisition of the church against the Jews. What Jews are we talking about this time? I'm just curious. Oh, let's go down after 13 says that the conquest of the Philippine Islands by Spain in the late 1560 and was soon followed by the Filipino Islands. The conquest of the Filipino Islands by Spain in the late 1600s was soon okay, I read it twice. Wow, sorry about that. Was soon followed by the establishment of the Inquisition and auto de fe, in which a few heretics appeared being held. What was being held? Oh, they were keeping the commandments in the 1572. Subsequently, however, the author of the Mexican Tribunal was recognized over the island. The work, never considerable, was at the beginning confined to Judaism. So basically, they was just confined to you keeping a commandment. You could be, if you keeping the Sabbath, if you're not eating pork, anything like that, you were considered a Judaizer and you were condemned and apprehended and sold in slavery. Who were dispatched? What they did was, see, there you go. There's the slavery part. They was dispatched out of the Philippines into Mexico for trial. Why did they send? So they sent them. Wow, they went into a ship into Mexico. Okay, cool. And in the auto de fe held there on March 28th, 1593, two conversos. They go that converso, but this time we talking about conversos to Christianity supposedly, but they actually were still practicing Judaism. From Manila was Juan and Dominique were reconciled, while proceeding had been begun at the same time against a Diego Hernandez, who, however, died in prison. So basically, he was prosecuted too, and he died. Now, there was a Manuel, an attorney from Manila, was reconciled at Mexico on March 25th, 1601, and 3 Judaizers from the Philippines were burned in an effigy at the Great Auto de Fe in the same city. So, bottom line is, this is evidence. Their link is here, confirming that there were people that were persecuted for being Judaizers. Can you truly prove 100%? I could prove that they was under the curse. So all it took is for them to say, no, you were Jews and you fall in the same curse, the same spells. You're not doing what I want you to do. You're not practicing and worshiping white Jesus. So guess what? We're going to send you into another country. So now, here we go, another book. The Travel of Pedro. So who is this Pedro? Now, Pedro was considered the king of Persia? Okay, so let's see who Pedro is. So Pedro was a Portuguese Moreno. That word, Moreno, converso. He was basically a Jew. Explorer and an author. Born in Lisbon. He was born in Lisbon, but we got articles about his time in the Philippines. So he was born in Lisbon and was one of the greatest travelers of his age. Subnavigated the globe during the years of 1585 to 1601. His first journey began in 1585 into 1586. He took him to China and the Philippines, from there to America, and finally back to Lisbon. Now, morals. We talked about that earlier. The Moors and Moors. Usage was revealed by the Europeans to denote a North African barber or Negroes who were converted to Islam by the Arabians. That's going back to them taking refuge into Muslim countries. And then sometimes if you go look at the Acts 28:2, it talks about the Berbers and how they are and who they are. The Berbers some of the Berbers were actually Jews. Just want to let you know. Now, can we prove it a little further? So we're not going to read the whole book. We're just going to cover a little segment of what the man was documenting about his trip while he was there. And then we're going to also look at the context. This book was translated and then interpreted. So let's see what it says. It says, they are of olive complexion, so they were dark, and go. Sometimes they go naked. But for a certain sheet of cotton, they were partly heathen and partly more. So you're saying one was not heathen and one was? I think that's what it says. But then he says, but the latter have been rooted out. What was rooted out? Oh, the more. Oh, so he's saying that the heathen side, he intermingled with some other nations. So now he's no longer considered a more of the of Israelite blood. Now he's just a heathen. Oh, okay, that's what he's saying. Interesting thing to say, because he didn't say Israel, he just said more. So he must mean something there. So let's look at the notes at the bottom. He says morals in Muslim lands were so far from being rooted out that they were warring on the Spaniards. So he was saying, like, it's kind of like he was saying, like, he said, then he goes, either Pedro was deceived or he was afraid to publish the truth. What truth? That they were part of Israel. Why would he say heathen? What's the difference between heathen and Moor? I thought the Moor was just a religion, right? No, he was talking about Israel. And then why would this guy in this content talking about, oh, because they were fighting with us, that was confirmation that those guys, though, they weren't no heathens. And then they gonna say he was deceived, meaning like he probably either he believed they were another nation, or he was afraid to publish the truth, meaning he was afraid to identify that no, those are Israelites. Get a clue. Pay attention. There's a reason why they're saying what they're saying. They are never going to be straightforward with you, but I think common sense sometimes start diving in and taking over and saying that, oh, that is what he's saying. And if you notice up here, he says Moors, and down there they say Moros. That confirms back to the first slide where they both are the same exact people. Now, as I was reading one of my books, I actually called The Survival of the Empire. I was reading this book, and this gentleman right here pops up in that book. So I felt like I had to add him. Why? Because he was a key pioneer in the silk trade and the trade in Asia as a whole, and he was called the King of Portuguese. So I'm like, okay, he was a King of Portuguese, but he was all over in Asia. So why do they call him the King of Portuguese? Now the thing is, they said he was a converso black Jew with an army of avengers and merchants and significant numbers of ships. So he owned a lot of ships and captains, and so basically this is like prior to during the Dark Ages, prior to the Renaissance age. He's built up his equity. He was just that's what he did for a job. He was a ship merchant, but his Jewish roots forced him to evade the Inquisition of Guo. Oh, that's that Inquisition again. It happened in India. So he basically fled India and literally to change his identity, like many other Jews who left Portuguese. Some sailed far as the Portuguese, the far distance overseas, proceeding into Asia. So when they flee, did someone go to Asia? Absolutely. It looks like he did. So when he started and concealed his commercial projects, we saw him. Basically, somebody was tracked. They identified him, and identified him in China, and then that basically from where he started voyaging to Cambodia, having an espouse and Eurasian woman, and which gave him 2 girls. Only Asians and African captains sailed on his ship. So in the Philippines of 1583, he represented the city of Macau and signed a trade agreement there. He sent 3 vessels and first one to sail to Manila. These vessels were very important for the economy of the city, as they contribute towards the recovery of Manila after the Great Fire of 1583. So bottom line is, this gentleman was a Jew that contributed to the trade of the trade market, basically. Basically, his nephew was known contact between the Manila authorities and Japan that taking place. So basically, he built a partnership between the Philippines and Japan. I think that's about it. All I want to cover on here, but the goal is to help you understand that this guy was a famous sailor and a black Jew, and he took refuge up in Asia when the Inquisition followed him there. So now here we go. So this book right here is your the Asian slave colony of Mexico. So both Cogent and Malabar, we just finished reading about those two areas where Israelites reside, where the Indians or the black Jews or the Hindu looking Jews were there, and all of a sudden the white Jews just happened to show up and start enslaving them, start persecuting them. The Inquisition happened to fall on there, even though they said they were Jews too. And then what happened? Just what happened? Well, for some reason, all of a sudden, a great gentleman who died on his way back to Portuguese from India, the grandmother who was a slave. He basically had a grandmother from a slave, and a grandpa slave trade from Molucco Islands. Now, that's just one location. That's over in Indonesia, actually. You got Africans coming from, or slaves coming from Southeast Africa, Papua New Guinea. And then if you go over here, on page 97, it says you got Malaysia and you got Manila. But now let's go over to in 1635, Gaspar, who was originally from Malabar, was sold in Manila for 62 pesos as a captive slave subject to servitude with proper title. He came from Malabar Coast. Why would he come from Malabar Coast? Oh, because those Jews were there. Just a coincidence. So you try to tell me those Jews literally was taken out of Malabar and sent into the Philippines. And then actually, let me go back to the other page. It says traveling with them by land and sea to place such Cogent and Ceylon. Then one day in Manila, he sold him unjustly. So basically, he sold him unjustly into slavery and ended up on board of the galleon bound to Acapulco, meaning that this guy was sent from Cogent, sold into the Philippines, and then unjustly sold again into Mexico. So it kind of looks like there's a trend of people coming, just happen to be the location where there were Jews, they would happen to be sold into slavery into the Philippines, and if they didn't stop there, they went on into Mexico. Going back to the book I mentioned earlier, Survival of the Empire. The Survival of the Empire, if you look at the middle page, 5,000 slaves was sold from China, by the way. Oh, and don't forget, we talked about China. We didn't talk exactly about the location in China, but they were sold from China as well. Into where? Oh, they went into the Philippines. Interesting. They went into the Philippines. If you look at some of these names, Lacasto means mixed Jew. I'm trying to think of the other term here. There's another one right here. Okay, there we go. Mesico. Man, please excuse my horrible grammar, but or reading. I'm not a great reader, obviously you can tell by now. But bottom line is the goal is to get you to understand and see. Guess what? These were Jews. You can Google the words. That's how I found out. I was reading this and I'm like, how do you say this word and what is this word? I Googled it and what popped up? Jew. A mixed Jew. Interesting. So you're trying to tell me these mixed Jews, and then you got over here, you're talking about them, encroachment from Manila. So they're going into Manila. So these Jews happen to be going from China to Manila now. So man, these are more evidence of slaves just happen to be traveling all over Asia into Manila, some to Mexico too. But I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, it's just a lot of books with information that happen to connect somehow. I'll take comments on this YouTube if I'm crazy, but I think I don't know. Hopefully I didn't read too far. I didn't go insane, but and as you can tell, I'm not a great reader. But this these books just line up to a lot of interesting coincidence that people that were Jews coming from India and in Asia and in China sold into the Philippines. So it looks like Philippines and South. And I'm sorry, like I mentioned earlier, I'm sorry I don't have all areas. They could have been sold into other areas in Southeast Asia, but I definitely got evidence of the Philippines. That's one thing I do have. And to the fact, here's another one: empires and entrepots. The Dutch. Now, that's one. I don't know if I mentioned earlier. The Dutch Jews. They were a major trader with Asia. With Asia. And I think this same gentleman was in the other book when we was talking about the Spanish Inquisition in the previous book. We talked about the two brothers. One was a mayor and was arrested for Judaizing in 1657, but his case was still active in 1661. According to the Mexican Inquisition, he had a brother called Sebastian, and they were possibly related. And one had a wife and one was a lawyer, and the family appeared to have been in Mexico. So that means one family was in the Philippines as a mayor, while the other family was in Mexico. Now, if you want to get more details, you can click on the link on the side. It would talk a little bit more about these gentlemen. And then over here, I did a little bit of translation on what these Spanish terms were. And I found it entertaining that they didn't translate these words, but they translated everything else in English. So what does it say? So when you begin to read, it says the Mexican Inquisition in its letter to the Supreme of September 1643 deliberating the pros and cons of exiling its Jewish codicidos or to Spain or the Philippines, pointed so they dispersed Jewish people to Spain or to the Philippines, pointed out that what did they point out? That they are Portuguese or descendants of them, of the Jews, and they past exile to Spain could communicate with the traders of Portuguese, and if to the Philippines they there to join with those of the India and because of great damage. So basically, that's the way it translated truly. But it's like they could become a great damage if we're trading them among each other from Mexico, from Spain. These guys are just like the Portuguese Jews, but they were trying to say what they could communicate with each other. So that might cause us greater damage because they might unite and work together. I might be wrong when I interpret it that way, but that is exactly what's being said. That they are putting these Jews over here, and they actually can communicate with each other, and they're the same descendants of them. So man, this might be a problem. Let's be careful, guys. That's what they're saying. So please note, this is another book. Just something I found. All right. So now we have this book called The Philippine Islands, the political, geographical, ethnographical, social, and commercial history of the Philippines. There's your title. Here's your book, 1700s, 1900s. So I just happened to find this word. Sometimes you got to look for words. It's just straight out, just say Jew. So this is about a person's adventure or time in the Philippines. So why is a Jew? Okay, so just let's just read a couple sentences here. It says there was a major and a lieutenant and a sub-lieutenant and a merchant and 2 civilian employees, all Spanish, besides 2 half-breed government officials, a Chinese half-breed broker. So they identify their pedigree and everything, or middleman with his family of 5, who occupied 2 cabins and took their meal there. An Austrian polyglot Jew peddler and a young Englishman. So he was a Jew. So what's a okay? Polyglot is pretty much a bilingual. He was bilingual. He can speak multiple languages. Peddler just is you're a hustler. You're a marketer. You know how to sell. You know how to sell on the street to survive and eat and to make money. So basically, he was just a marketer, a salesman. That's what a peddler is. Is a salesman. And that was on 468. Now let's go back to page 185 over here. It says the women too were less the women too are less companion in the south than in the north, and advance an almost incredible advocacy. They are excessively fond of ornaments, and at feasts they appear adored with an amount of French jewelry, which compared with their means has cost them a lot of money to purchase from the swarm of Jew peddlers who invaded the village. So you're saying there was a bunch of Jews that invaded the village. Where did they come from? Don't know, but guess what? They were there. They were there. So now let's do some contrast on some history. This contrast on history based on the uprising up in the West, on who was identified as Israel. So once again, we got the book, The Asian Slaves of Colonial Mexico. Just a coincidence, we're talking about Cebu and Boho. And Muslims, we already identified that the Muslims and the Moors were more likely, a lot of them were actually Israel. Now, just for some reason, due to a natural desire to know what locations mattered, Boho was a strong location as well as Cebu. Now, we already talked about Manasseh being in India. We also got Manasseh identified by other camps being from other countries. Not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying just do a compare and contrast. Let's see how this thing turns out. So if you read Deuteronomy 33:13, we want to see what's the blessing of Manasseh and see just how it lines up. It says, now Joseph said, he said, blessed of the Lord be his land, and of precious things of the heaven for the dew, and for the deep that coaches beneath. It says, and for the precious fruit brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon, and for the chief things by the ancient mountains, and for the precious things of lasting hills, and for the precious things of the earth, and the fullness thereof, and for the good will of him that dwell in the bush. So now, and okay, let me go to verse 17. And it says, and his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of a unicorn. With them he shall push the people together to the end of the earth, and they are the 10,000 of Ephraim and the 10,000 of Manasseh. Okay, now from what I know, Cuba and Puerto Rico is considered Manasseh and Ephraim. I'm not rejecting that at all. I just find it very strange and interesting that these hills are very reflective of what's going on, and hills are very reflective of this scripture here. I could be wrong. I totally could be wrong. I'm a baby. I'm totally a baby. However, I just want to make sure, somebody teach me, show me something new. I'm just doing research, like I said, due to my location. I have no one around me. But then it says that there's 1,700 hills spread out through 50 square kilometers at height of 164 feet to 390 feet, similar to hills of limestone regions like the ones in North Puerto Rico. Oh, that's Puerto Rico. And to De La Rose province in Cuba. Wow, that's very interesting. And it says De La Ruz province was founded by the Spanish as Nuevo Filipinos, meaning New Philippines. That is just strange. That is really strange. That's too many similarities, but okay, cool. I mean, it's just landscape, nothing more. But the mirror matches. There's a mirror there somehow. I don't know how that got there. So let's look at another one. Oh, here we go. So then once again we got Puerto Rico and Cuba again. Manasseh and Ephraim again. Oh, okay, okay. So the other one was just a coincidence. Maybe, this pulling it out of my butt because it's something that might look like they're similar, but I could be wrong. So that's another relationship that might work. Well, let's say the Treaty of Paris of 1898 was a treaty signed by Spanish in the United States on December 10th, 1989. Or 1988, I mean 18, I'm sorry, 1898, that ended the Spanish and American War. Under it, Spanish relinquished all the claims and sovereignty over the title of who? Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. Ding, 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 ding. There's too many. Oh wow, why those countries? Why just happen to be those? I don't know. And just one just happened. Two of them happened to be over in the Asia area, and the other one's been over, over to America. So Deuteronomy 28. I mean, they should buy you, and no one should. Oh, they actually got brought out. And I don't know if I got it in here, but the Philippines was named after King Philip. That's a byword and proverb. That's not the name of the island. I think it was called Maya back in the day. That's definitely not the name of the island. The people call themselves by the name of King Philip. King Philip is not the name of the people. They're not their own country, and trust me, they're not their own country. So now, the American buys the Philippines. They pay for them and say, we own the Philippines now. So what do? What they did is they started a war with the people that were in the Philippines that the Spanish could not beat. They could not beat the Filipinos or the people of the Philippines. There was too many different cultures, too many different people. They were hard. I read in the book earlier that they was warring with the Moors. The Moors. So who was enemy number one? The Moors. You have some other people there that, now don't forget, just like any other country, you got some wicked people that's going to trade on you, that's going to join hands with them and to fight with them. So guess what? They had Filipinos, definitely a lot of Filipinos joined with them. But then you have some leaders that would surrender and swear their alliance with their people, with the conqueror, and then retire their family and stuff, and basically mark the end of their first republican and say, all right, here you go, I surrender. And they ended the resistance. But then it says it is an estimate that at least 34,000 Filipinos were killed as a direct result of the war, and another 200 by epidemic. So they basically had diseases among the refugees. So they put them in camps because they didn't kill them all. They just put them in camps. Thus, in concentration camps, the Filipino historian stated that 1.4 million Filipinos died during the war that constituted as an act of genocide as a part of the United States. So basically they're saying they went there, bought the land, and just started just murdering people left and right, putting them in camps. And American and Filipino war is one of the most quietest war anybody ever heard of. Maybe because there wasn't another agenda. So they swept it under the rug, they handled their business, they executed and hung thousands of people as well. They hung these guys right here. They just happened to hang these Moors. These are prisoners. You see the chains around their ankles. They were going up they was up next for execution to be hung as well. Here are some more hanging. And actually, those are other Filipino soldiers hanging other Filipinos. That sounds familiar. Other people, your own people did it. Did they? More hangings. And hangings. Oh, this is from the Spanish Inquisition. This is many years ago, though. But that was in another country. But just coincidence they hanging them there too. That's all. Okay. So now let's look at another document. Let's look at some more information. So basically, there was this group of Buffalo soldiers that went over there to fight against them, and so they would send, black on Asian crime. It's Asian hate now. So they're gonna send them. Okay, go fight these people. Well, if you know your history, a lot of these Buffalo soldiers basically defected. A good number 30 or more defected and left their units because they just realized, why am I fighting these people when they suppress me as well as they suppress them? In fact, there were actually black soldiers hung in the Filipino War. Yes, that did happen. Now, if you want, there's this movie called The Real Glory of 1938. It's an historical movie about the American and Filipino War, and you will find it very interesting how the Moor is not even considered a Filipino in that movie. And the Moors were the Moors fighting against religion, or were they fighting against oppression? You be the judge. Now I got some time hacks on here. You go to 6 minutes, 55 seconds, or 46 minutes, and you'll find interesting clips in that movie. Or you can just watch the whole entire movie and enjoy it. Sit back, get some popcorn, and just see what this movie about. And cheer on the victors. But bottom line, just realize that this war was not just a normal war. There was another agenda involved that happened that started well before the war, but then the war was like, all right, we're gonna finish these cats out. They had a resistance that they could not take out, and they brought in, they did a WWF, Spain high five and tagged out and gave it over to America and said, all right, now you finish the work. And they did. And they just slaughtered them. Good job. So, more, just like Babylon and Assyria captivity is similar to the Spanish and American captivity in the Philippines. Both are just exchanging landlords, and history and repeats itself. It's just, all right, we're gonna come in, we're gonna take over now, and we got it. High five. Let's go. And what was the other torture? They actually put things, they actually strangled them. They had this strangling technique they used. They used their own people to strangle them and to get them to reveal other locations where they had hideouts, because it was hard to capture them. That's why the Spanish couldn't fight them, because they were hiding and it was hard to infiltrate them, and it was guerrilla warfare, and it wasn't easy. But they turned them against each other, and they finally destroyed them, and they basically put a yoke of iron around their neck until they were destroyed, and they gave it up. They had to give up the word. And just some reason, the one of the concentration camps we talked about earlier, they actually was sent into Guam as well in concentration camps. This is actually a sign from Guam in 1901. The U.S. government in the Philippines banished Filipino rebels to prison camps in Asan Point in Guam. Just another example of somebody having a yoke of iron around his neck and someone's turning and choking him as a form of torture. This is another practice they use in the American Filipino War. It's called waterboarding or water torturing. They did it because they thought it was just and if you read the article, it said it was actually harmless. It wasn't a bad method. It wasn't killing them or hanging them. So they were waterboarding. The picture on the left just happened to be the same technique they used in the Spanish Inquisition. Wow. Nothing. Some things just history repeats itself. Is it a coincidence? It could be. I mean, I don't know. Everybody went through the same thing, right? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying these guys went to identical curses. There's another presentation that I will have later on where you will see the curses still precede them. Slavery, sex trafficking, grown ladies are enslaved in other countries from the Philippines. Yes, that does happen to this day. It's out there on YouTube. Google it. It's out there. But bottom line is, I want you to see and do your own research. I could totally be wrong, and I will gladly admit that I could be wrong. But I see too many patterns for me just to eliminate and go, not those guys. I got to say, well, if your spirit bear witness, well, let's keep these commandments then. But it is hard to tell who's who in the zoo because there's a lot of mixing. That is very, very true. So I understand why it's hard to touch. But you gotta shine a light on it. So let's do it. Let's bring all the northern tribe back, because I think the northern tribe is well vast than we think it is.